Well, good morning. It's so fun to be back here with you, Michelle Wadleigh, aka Rev Jersey Girl. Some of you knew me for quite a while in my Jersey Girl Wisdom show. So I was invited to be a guest facilitator this morning, and I said yes because love this organization, love this teaching. I love what New Thought Radio, New Thought Media and Radio are doing, and I'm here to support the process. So, and I want to thank my engineer behind the scenes, the Dr. Tracy Brown, because without her, this wouldn't be possible. And so I'm here with you this morning, and we are continuing in the conversation around physical perfection. But because we are a Science of Mind community, because we are a teaching and a philosophy based in the spoken word, I'd like to begin our time together with a spoken word because it sets the mood and it sets the consciousness. So join me if you care to. You can close your eyes or not. The reason why we close our eyes is we close our eyes to not be distracted by the world, because the world is distracting. However, when we close our eyes, we go to that inner landscape, get quiet within ourselves. We begin to pay attention to the breath and that voice behind the voice. And when we sit in quiet, the other voices get even more quiet. And there in that moment, we are able to surrender to the one, all that is, to accept and allow the presence and the power and the intelligence of the one as that which ebbs and flows and moves through our mind, our heart, our body, temple, that which is everything that is. And as we surrender and align with it, we become one with this incredibly creative process that is always seeking to create out of itself. And so as I speak this word today for each listener, what I know with complete confidence, conviction, and faith is that there is a listening happening today, a listening that elevates us, a listening that brings us to a higher level of receptivity, and that we each find today something in the conversation that helps us to move further along the path of evolution in our lives. I call this time good, and so very good. I bless everything having to do with this conversation. I bless you as the listener. And I trust that each time we enter that time of blessing, there is a natural internal revolution of rising up that's happening. With a bounty of gratitude, I surrender this word, and I let it be so, and so it is. So thank you for being here. So I chose this subject because we got to choose when we wanted to participate in our Saturday mornings. And I chose this one not because I am an expression of perfect physical experience or a physical perfection, but because in my growing up as a metaphysician, and I only have known metaphysics, for me, it was metaphysics was about moving into wholeness. It was about recognizing the elements in our lives that were working possibly against my spiritual essence. And so my original teacher, I know, although we weren't learning the science of mind at the time, I know for a fact that what she was teaching us was science of mind, because over time I have come to when I read certain things in the textbook and I remember the language, I remember that this was the specific language that I was learning from when I was knee-high to a grasshopper. So for me, I want to be clear, because the teacher reflects their own opinions, right? I mean, every teacher that comes in here has a slightly different facet of how we look at what it is, what's presented in the textbook. And for me, it is very important that we learn to who we are and the influences in our lives on our physical body, but without judging ourselves. I want to say that up front. So as we continue in the conversation, even around what's in the textbook, and we talk about the concept of physical perfection, it is absolutely, absolutely necessary for you, the listener, if you don't fall into what you think is the category of physical perfection, it is critical that you don't judge yourself, because the judging of the self is the human part of what interrupts. It interrupts our direct access to spirit, and it like short circuits us. So please, if you're listening, be willing to look without judging. Be willing to simply, look at your life. Because in Science of Mind, it all comes down, very oversimplified, but it works to you. If you use this very simple formula, you can cease judging where you're at. And it comes down to cause and effect. And so some of the causes that affect our body temple, some of the causes that affect us in either being healthy or not healthy, are absolutely not something that we are aware of. And that's part of where this teaching gets complicated, because Holmes says we should carefully consider whether we are willing to experience the results of our thoughts. There should never be any hurt in them, or ourselves, or anyone else. We may be sure that if there is hurt for others, there is also hurt for ourselves. Now let's just stop and pick this piece apart just as it is. Because the fact is, what Ernest Holmes is saying is there is no experience outside of your experience, outside of your thinking stuff. There's no experience outside of that. So there's not like a delay. All right. So the thoughts that we ponder on a regular basis, on an extended basis, infiltrate into the co-creative process of Science of Mind, and we become the result of it. Here's where it becomes an issue, though. There are many influences that seep into who you are at the subjective level. They do. I hate to admit it, but there are the collective, there's a global belief, for example, in cancer. There's a global belief, like we recently had a global united experience about COVID. So that got into our psyche. And there was a unspoken agreement for many, not everyone, that this existed. There's an unspoken agreement that cancer is real. There's an unspoken agreement that certain influences in our lives cause diseases. So that those agreements are powerful, but they're not necessarily true. And I can't remember the term. Thomas Troward had a term for that. So even though we let those things seep into us and then we demonstrate them unconsciously in our lives, it doesn't mean that the premise that we're agreeing upon is right. And that's a really important distinction. So most of us, and I fought this as hard as I could, there is a global belief that somewhere around the age of 40, our eyes change and we need glasses. Now, and I love somewhere there's a story that Ernest Holmes said that the edge of his limitations was sitting on the bridge of his nose, which meant his glasses. And so there are certain things that seep into us that impact our physical body. You, each of us individually, decide whether or not that particular thing is something you want to give all the time and attention to heal or cure yourself from. Do you want to put the time and attention in it so that you no longer need glasses? Now that's just a pure choice. But the attention that we give to the experiences that we're having most definitely they impact our body. So, but depending upon who we are, depending upon the how things seeped into us, I'm gonna go off. I'm gonna change focus for a second. For example, we for a long time believed that we were at the mercy of genetics. We believed we were at the mercy of our DNA. And clearly now science is saying, and quantum science specifically is saying, nope, nope, that's no longer so. And I remember the very first book I wrote, I wish that I read, which was It's the Thought That Counts by this Scottish doctor, David Hamilton, I believe. Oh my gosh, I can't believe. And that book was where I finally started waking up to the fact in the scientific world that proved it, because I had an internal belief, but where they're saying, no, we are not at the mercy of these things. And depending upon our influence, we can turn some of these markers on and off in our bodies. So if we can turn them on and off, then what turns them on and off? What is that we need to do? And so in my world, in my application of science of mind, it is critical for me to consistently align with the one. And through developing that relationship, getting into alignment, and as the shamans refer to it, love this reference, living in right relationship with spirit brings us into a focus and an intention of being available for the constant download of intelligence, intuition, and to not be distracted by the ailments and the diagnoses that come along with being human. Holmes is clear in this chapter, though. Holmes is clear. We are not here. Science of Mind people are not here to criticize the doctors of the world. There are times we align with them more than others, but God is in the pill and the prayer. We are not here to deny our physical needs and suffer because we're not sure quite how to apply the spiritual aspects. Okay? Suffering is not it's not your ordination. It's not. So let's go back to the physical body directly. We have the ability to choose what we will do with our life, and we are unified with a law which automatically produces our choice. Okay, now that's on page 195. And if you think I've changed the language I've made it somewhat gender neutral. We have the ability to choose what we will do with our life, and we are unified with a law which automatically produces our choice. Okay, now this is a huge subject that we could take offline and have discussions about for hours. And Thomas Troward, and I like to keep relating what Holmes is saying with Thomas Troward, because I know Troward was a huge influence to Holmes, because Troward was also of the thinking in his initial Edinburgh lectures that, you think a thought, and and the intelligence within you says yes to that thought. And they kind of, he presented it like it was pretty straightforward. But anyone with diabetes, anyone gaining weight when you don't want to gain weight, anyone that has a physical issue, you probably struggle with, wait a minute, I was thinking positive thoughts. Why did this happen? Okay, so that's a really good self-inquiry. It's not to, and again, we're not looking for fault. We're never, ever looking for fault. But we are looking to what are we pondering? What are we pondering? And what influences have been around us? For each one of us, our lineage has had some influence over what happens to us physically, unless we are able to recognize that influence, heal the influence, do forgiveness work around the influence, and do some shadow work around the influence, because then we neutralize its impact so that through us it becomes healthier and more whole, and then our lineage is healthier and more whole. So when he says we have a choice and that then life produces or law automatically responds, what happens for those of us who are not having that wonderful, perfect health experience? And that is because the world around us, especially in this time of, and not just 2023, but ever since technology has had its way to influence us. Now, the Gutenberg printing press, of course, had an influence, but you had to go to want to read what was on the pages of whatever you were reading. But now, with technology, with radio waves, with advertisements, with commercials on television, if you watch, on every social media, and because of the collective consciousness, which you can't see, that, but you can be sure that somewhere it has seeped in. And the way we combat the influences of the world is to stay plugged in. Your spiritual practices, my three go-to are meditation, contemplation, and spiritual mind treatment. Those are my three that for me that weave together a healthy practice. But the moment that something is not totally working, I encourage you to go to a prayer practitioner. And I want to be clear about this distinction too, because some people will say, well, I have a prayer partner. The thing about having a prayer partner is that there is an exchange and you're both taking care of each other. But when you hire a prayer practitioner, you have that person who's looking out for you and only you. So if your life experience is not perfect, then just know that there are influences that are having access to you. And that is something that you and I have to pay attention to. And to the degree we raise our self-awareness and our consciousness, to that degree we are less and less and less available to the influences surrounding us. I don't want to do any predictions or make any false promises, but I do say to you, if you are walking in a conscious, aware world, you have boosted your own immune. You make yourself by far less available to what is around you. Okay. At the bottom of, or on 196, he says 6, excuse me. Humans are of a conscious mind or spirit. This stands for objective faculty. The objective mind of human is the recognition of life in a conscious state. It is the only attribute of humans that is volition or self-choosing. Very important. Your focus, my focus, our collective focus needs to be on one that is constantly lifting you, lifting you. When Ernest Holmes said, and you know this quote, this is the single most famous quote that many other teachers have now altered to some degree, and used, change your thinking, change your life. But I want to tweak. I'm bold enough to tweak it. And I think this is fair. And I think if Ernest Holmes was here today with us, I actually think that he would, in some way, be willing to even alter it himself, because it's just downright logical. And that is, change your thinking, feeling, speaking, pondering, daydreaming, imagining, change your life. Catch that? Instead of change your thinking, change your life. Change your thinking, speaking, pondering, imagining, daydreaming. Change your life. Because all of those are versions of you using the power of volition to create your life. So when you are in, always use this as an example because for me, I know that when I used to not pay attention to my mental meanderings when I would drive a car. And so I realized that somehow I thought when I was in a car that spirit wasn't listening. So spirit wouldn't be acting through me, right, to demonstrate my thoughts or my complaints or whatever I was, pondering at the time. But the fact is, there is no moment, no time, nothing. There is no separation. So some of what we have to do is to become the expert and become disciplined in what we are pondering consciously and even unconsciously. We must become the expert in ourselves. He goes on to say, and this is at the bottom of 196, as mind or soul accepts these images of thoughts, it operates upon unformed substance. Love this. Upon unformed substance and causes it to take definite form as body, which is unconscious form. He's saying, what we're saying here is that all of your meanderings have a trickle down effect landing as influence in your body temple. This is why it is critically important that we each in this movement give up any habit of worry. Now, you've heard it 100,000 times. Worry is a down payment of what you don't want. But very specifically, when it comes to the body temple, worry is not going to get you to the experience you want to have. It is not going to get you there. What will get you there is the recognition that I am whole, perfect, and complete, and I am a child of the beloved one that so wants to create out of itself. It creates through me, through you, as me, as you. And so when we're pondering health, when we're pondering wholeness, when we're pondering, if you get caught up in it, pondering disease, these meandering little thoughts become things of influence in our lives. So our job, our main job is to consistently pay attention to the influences, to be the best gatekeeper of your consciousness that you could possibly be. The best gatekeeper you could possibly be. Because in being that gatekeeper, you will see where, very possibly, where you have been hovering in, oh my God, I hope I don't get cancer. Oh my God, I hope I don't have what my mother had. And we do that. And in that, oh my God, there's actually emotion connected to it. So now we have a thought with a feeling. And when those two connect, they are of the creative process, the very simple creative process. But when we're hovering, this is we want to pay attention. Where am I? What am I pondering? What am I allowing through my consciousness? It is absolutely critical. He says, never forget that the conscious mind is the only actor in the universe and in humans. That the unconscious, or subjective mind is compelled by reason of its nature to accept it and can never reject it. The body is an effect with no intelligence of its own. Now, I must say to you, I wonder about that because the body, if the body's meant to heal, I do wonder where that intelligence exists. And part of me feels like that's possibly built into the cells of our body, but that's my own pondering here. I don't want to I don't want to get too caught up in that. So, what do we do? What do we do to stay healthy? First of all, commit your life to believing that life is filled with cause and effect. That life is filled with cause and effect. Know in your heart of hearts that you are not now, never have been, and never will be left to the mercy of conditioning as long as you raise your self awareness, which increases the scope of your consciousness. Because as the consciousness increases, then you will walk around almost kind of in this protective bubble of consciousness, reminding you of your perfection. Humans are fundamentally perfect. This is our whole premise. And I know this is where a student will always stop me in my classes and say, what about babies that are born with limited abilities or changed abilities? And the truth is, I don't have an answer for you. I can only do what I can do within the scope of my consciousness and know there. And then the rest is about acceptance and allowance. Okay, so I just want to mention that right away. Perfect God, perfect human, perfect being. This is the whole basis of our argument. Now, this part is very important. As a yes, I'm a minister, but first a practitioner. And in my engagement in the world, I am a practitioner first. I think of my role as practitioner as even more important than my role as a minister, because it is my role as a practitioner that has me bring to you my skill set. And my skill set says that when I'm working with a client, I am not agreeing with their fear. I am not agreeing with their story. I am listening. I am with my heart listening, because they need to be able to express the energy caught in their feeling, okay, or their discomfort. But I'm not aligning with it. The way I say it in my world is instead of colluding with their less than, I want to collaborate with their possibility. So, with a friend, let's say you're not a practitioner, you're not a minister, you're just a normal everyday Josephine. Okay. When somebody is telling you something, when a friend is telling you something that they're feeling, they're experiencing, the way you can serve this individual, even serve yourself, to be honest, and this is what I'm about to tell you, is that you move past the image of what they're giving you and you look through them to find their state of perfection. So within our life experience, there is a mental equivalent for perfection. So when we're talking to each other, we want to hook into that mental equivalent of perfection and not get distracted by the story of limitation. So whether, again, you're a practitioner or just a friend, you exercise it. You're almost becoming a practitioner if you're willing to not get caught up in the story of the suffering. Now, there's something I passed over, and I want to tie it together, especially since it's tied together with the global theme of this that we're doing this year with the Centers for Spiritual Living. And this month was on the shadow. So the all that is, the ever-present, the intelligent one, the intelligent everything, it accesses through us, as us. It accesses through, right? We know this for sure. So the thing, our job, my job, your job, is to make sure that spirit has the most direct access as possible. So for this month, as we have been paying attention to the shadow, I I want to assure you that that is not wasted time. Because if spirit is seeking access to your inner source of power too, right? You have this thing that was born with you. It's placing you where you've never been hurt, harmed, or injured in any way. And so a spirit is seeking to align with that part of you. But for many of us, we have these veils of distraction. We have these veils. And they are beliefs. They are separate individual beliefs from everything from I'm not lovable to I'm not worthy, and a wide variety in between. So between beliefs, just our own beliefs that are qualified by what we believe in, and the shadow, when we approach that and do our healing work around it, whatever that is for you, we lift that veil. So now, when you and I determine ourselves as worthy of health and wholeness and just physical health and wholeness, spirit will have greater access because you, of your own essence, is less distracted by the shadows, less distracted by the belief system, less distracted by the pain. And I just want to let that settle for a second. So in treating, we must recognize that the power we are using is definite, scientific, dynamic, spiritual, absolute, complete, and that it will work. We must not allow fear. And so it seems so trite to say that like that, because you have a diagnosis, you might run face first into fear. So you're going to have fear. I'm going to have fear. Again, one of the ways we work with that is we work with somebody who can meet us and to allow us to process it without giving it more power over us. But probably another one of the critical things is to remember that you deserve wholeness. You are wholeness. You've likely had some distractions, some human distractions, but we want to remember in no uncertain terms that the thing that we are treating for, which is perfection or physical healing, whatever that is, there is nothing that can stand in our way of getting it. Nothing, no thing, no idea that's stronger than the power of the presence of us. In our work, we treat humans not as physical body, neither do we treat the disease as belonging to this person. We cannot subsequently free them from their experience if we believe in the experience. We have mistranslated this sometimes as practitioners. I admit it. We argue. There's arguments about how how do we do this, because we have to look at how do we do this mindfully. And while doing it mindfully, how do we make sure we're not practicing spiritual bypass? Okay, there's two important distinctions. So when I'm working with a client, if I was treating for you right now, I would be recognizing the perfection of you. I know you might be in some pain or discomfort. I'm not denying your human experience. However, I know that there's something grander than that. And the thing that is grander than that is absolutely available to you. Absolutely available. So my job, and I think about this often. I think, what if everyone we knew, every family member, friend, coworker, what if the world at large could learn that we need to look past the illusion of pain and suffering? I'm going to leave that like that. That's almost a Course in Miracles kind of thing. We look past the illusion of suffering and we hook ourselves into principle. We hook ourselves into the principle of perfection, of the holy and sacred that was born through you as you. We would just be all waking up and rising up, because if I look at you and I think of your limitations, there's nowhere for you to go. But if I look at you and I think of you as a divine emanation of the one, intelligent and deserving of all good, you're going to rise up to that expectation. That's our job, to cast the vision of physical perfection, to cast the vision of holiness and sacredness, so that we all get caught up in each other's vision, cast upon each other, holding us to a higher possibility. That excites the heck out of me. The heck out of me. Now, in order to get there, though, I must do it here. We must learn. So, a little tip. Before you allow something to leave your mouth to teach someone else, before you start saying, "Oh, look, you're still limited by," before those kind of words leave your mouth, ask yourself, am I that? Am I that? Because in that honest pondering, you'll look again to your inner landscape and you can ask yourself, wow, have I done the work? Am I clear of this? Because unless you and I work to clear and discipline, it comes down to discipline. It's thought by thought by thought, day by day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute. It's not just when you're meditating. It is throughout your day. Am I thinking in the lines of wholeness? Am I criticizing, bitching, moaning, complaining, gossiping, and judging, which suppresses my ability to heal? All of those things suppress your ability to heal. They interrupt you. So your job, my job, is to first become the healthiest version of ourselves that we can, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Yeah, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. We have learned that the subjective, I don't know what page this one is on, my apologies. We have learned that the subjective mind can deduce only, and it cannot of itself initiate anything. But this does not mean that it is unintelligent. Okay. It's really funny. Science of mind is simple, and yet complicated. The application of the things that we discuss, the application of the things that we learn is where it is. It's almost if we have to go to the absolute in our behavior, in our languaging. I remember being put in my place, not in a negative or nasty way at all. But I said something very limiting not a new minister, but as a minister. And I guess I had enough years under my belt, and we were in the Sillamar experience, and a minister I spoke to called me out on the negativity or the limitation of my language. And I thought, oh, she's being so fussy. She's being fussy. That was what, and I got all high and mighty inside myself. And I, be honest with you, basically dismissed the person. But later I pondered, and I don't mind being fussy as long as I learn from the lesson later on. But over time and pondering that experience, I came to realize the presence of God is who I am. So that is every cell of my body, every thought that I think, every word that I speak. I create my world by means of my word. But here's the thing, the word that is spoken and the word that is unspoken. And we often forget about the unspoken language. And that language often shows up again as worried. The unspoken language shows up as our self-criticism or criticism of others. But spirit that is just raining down over us, pouring itself over us, so that it's like a sweet summer rain. You know, the kind you want to go out in, that's kind of misty. The weather's warm, but there's just this sweet mist. Spirit is constantly pouring itself over. And so it's not seeking to access only through us at certain times in certain moments. It's complete. We have to get that it's complete. Everything we think, everything that we feeling that we indulge is an interaction with spirit, is an interaction with the intelligence. So if this is true, and this is where it begins to become a little taxing, because then you might start to think, well, when do I ever get to relax? Well, you get to relax, but once you have conditioned your mind, to be the one that walks in the room and brings the silver lining. I wasn't that way in the beginning of this teaching. Even with my earlier training, I was often a negative Nelly, often pondering ideas of limitations. It is through the science of mind that I realized I am the action of God. My I am is constantly interacting. I am in divine relationship with it. And I cannot afford to not be conscious of this activity. So as I've learned over the years to be disciplined and to uplift my languaging, thank you to that minister who did that, or who reminded me, thank God for her. And there was many people like that, actually. There were many people who worked to redirect my attention. I thank all of those teachers. And so as that became who I am, I started to become the optimist in the room. I always wanted to be that person. I want to be the one that when they walk in the room, happiness comes and actually precedes them into the room. You all know somebody like that. We also know people who walk into the room and they're dismal and the energy in the room feels different. Well, there's also the optimist, but it takes discipline. So when we begin to discipline ourselves to think in these holy and sacred ways, then the whole concept of what Ernest Holmes is trying to get us to realize is that then the thoughts that we think are immediately acted upon. Immediately. Law moves in immediately. There is no delay. But what is it acting upon? That's the key. Who are you being as it is acting upon you and I? So our physical health and perfection must come because we believe that we are one with this Holy One, and that every cell of our body is infiltrated with the love and the essence and the intelligence of the One. Ponder that all day. Ponder that. That will lead you to greater health and wholeness. And if something comes along and slaps you up the side of the head and interrupts your perfection, do not judge yourself. Just go into the question, what happened here? What thought or influence did I not catch? No beating yourself up. What thought or influence? And I say that, and I separate them out, because one is a thought that you maybe is a fear thought or belief that you thought and didn't pay attention to. But the other is the unconscious influence that comes from the collective subjective. Because if the During COVID, it was really hard time. It was really hard because there was such an agreement, right? Thank you, God, that we're on the other side of that. So let us have an agreement in wholeness. Let us have an agreement about perfection. Let us let us meet in that world, in that world. And so if and when something, because you'll get a cold or something will happen. And I know someone saying, no, 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 no. I still believe that we're human. So, stuff happens. God knows that. There was a period in my life I had bronchitis 3 years in a row until I recognized what was actually going on. And the third year, I was able to interrupt its creation. It didn't fully develop in me. So let us lean into our divine birthright of the perfection of the one. Let us lean into believing that there is an intelligence in our mind and body that works together as a cohort, reminding us of our perfection. Let us remember that we are not at the mercy of anything ever. Let us look upon the ailments and bless them and say, teach me. And then raise our awareness and raise our consciousness once again. Let us be that. Let us walk in the mind of God, being in the mind of God, allowing the mind of God to be our mind. And remember, nothing is outside of us. Nothing. Nothing is outside of us. That's the truth. That's the truth. Nothing is bigger than us. Nothing is outside of us. And we are capable of demonstrating the presence of intelligence and perfection at any turn. You need a procedure, go get the procedure. Bless everyone involved. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. If you have to go get from a knee replacement to a dental work done, before you go, you align with the one by moving into the quiet of your mind and heart. And then you bless the doctor, the nurse, the technicians, the anesthesiologist. If there's medication that's been prescribed, or just an antibiotic, bless the medication. What happens when you do that? You are moving in the mind of God. You are moving in it. You are activating the machinery of God. You are leaning into the law. That's what you're doing. You can do this. Just don't believe in the fear-based thoughts. Give power to the presence as you. Let's close this with a spiritual mind treatment. Take a breath, if you will. Close your eyes if you're willing. And accept and allow the intelligence of the one, the love of the one, the influence of the one to be your one and only reality. Let us accept and align this one as being our authority, our power, our source of good in our lives. And as we accept that, I know for each one listening that something was learned today to lift us out of the confounds of our human experience to our spiritual essence, that we are more capable in this moment, more empowered in this moment than ever before to rise up, to be able to handle and manage the beauty and the power of our lives, leaving us holy, physically healthy, mentally healthy, in all ways that are good and very good. Let us accept this reality as so, and with a bounty of gratitude, I release this word to love, to law, and to the awe of life itself. And so it is. Multiple blessings to you. May you be bold and brilliant and beautiful just as you are every moment of every day. God bless you. I thank you. Go and be brilliant. See you soon.